Hi, so I'm Nikki. I work at a company called FutureLearn as a technical manager right now. But before that, I was a web developer for a long, long time. And I'm definitely on the developer end of the designer-developer skill set. I have an appreciation and an understanding for design, but I'm not a designer. So I've always had to work in a team with other designers to ship the products that we build together. I can't do it on my own. So I have a keen interest in understanding and helping developers and designers work together more closely and effectively. And this talk is about one cool way of doing that. So today I want to talk about designers and developers who want to push their imaginations to the limit and push the web to the limit. And I'm going to talk about how one of our most used solutions, the base of all of the layouts over the years, grids, has served us really well for a long time, but now it's time to move on. So grids are great. They work really well for lots of reasons. We've all been using them and building them for years, months, decades, some of us, from floats to tables, flexbox, CSS grid itself. Why are they so important? Why not just have everything in one long column? Well, to answer that question, we need to go way back. In the 14th century, monks were scribbling notes in the margins of their manuscripts. I understand that most of them were fart jokes, if the internet is anything to go by. Effectively one long column. 200 years later, we finally got around to inventing the two-column layout. And here you can see the benefits immediately of grid layouts. You can get way more information on the page. The previous example is really beautiful, but information here is much more dense. Later on, in the 50s, the grid movement sort of exploded and flourished, and actually was named for the very first time. And it starts to look a bit more familiar to you people who are using CSS grids, and a little bit more similar to the consistent modular component systems that we use today. And in fact, this grid was designed for that exact reason, so that the output, the product that it was used to design, would have consistency and be easier to create and quicker to reproduce. It helps people keep their layouts readable, it helps balance the page, it helps make sure that one element is not overpowering another. But there are some bad ways to use grids too, like this. So you can take relying on a grid too far. This can be a problem, right? And I'm not knocking it. The reason that we do this is because it's easy. On many levels it works. It's modular, it's easy to reproduce, but it's also quite boring. You look at this and you see the clue is in the name. It's called the CSS box model. It makes boxes. You can have the margin wherever you want these days, but they're all the same basic shape. And design is a discipline with this huge, rich, long history, and we're not making the most use of it that we could. And things like this are a problem. It's really good that excellent design and communication tools are available now and available to many more people via web publishing tools and page templates than ever before. But the benefits of all of that rich history are lost when everything starts to look a bit sort of similar and samey. And you run the risk of not getting your message across as effectively as you could. And it's not just me who thinks this. This is Jen Simmons. She is a designer and developer advocate at Mozilla. And she's doing amazing work at the moment. If you want to check out anything about CSS Grid or CSS Shapes, she's one of the people that's really pushing the industry in that area. This is a quote from a web video discussion that she did last year on a list apart. It's really good. You should go and read and watch the rest of it. Right before she said this, she said, "We're copying each other's work too much. Too many things look like Medium. Too many things look like web design out of 2007. Too many things look like copies of each other. Everybody's bored." So there is a way to make design better on the web. Apparently it's that way. So once I started thinking about this, I just saw it everywhere. This is a page I picked up the Evening Standard on my commute, and immediately this outline around the picture drew me in and made me want to read the article. I found another one on the way here this evening. And I got curious about the Evening Standard. And so I went looking for the online version of this article, just to see what the difference would be and what translation the designers had kind of gone through on their way into it. And you can see there's literally nothing. I think the text and that picture are the only thing that's the same, which I think is a real shame. And this article really didn't do such a good job of drawing me in and making me want to read it. And again, once you start looking, you can see examples of graphic designers pushing the boundaries of print layout everywhere. We could be doing stuff much more exciting, like really striking art direction or having text flow around, the lines of things. Anyway, the point of all these examples, print is pushing the boundaries, we on the web are lagging behind. So if we did want to do something like this, and we didn't have CSS shapes, how could we do it? Well, we could go super old school and just chuck everything in an image, put all your text and pictures in there together. Don't want to do this. Not very accessible, not very responsive, not really very scalable. A lot of webcomics, I think, are still published like this, which I think is a bit of a shame. Or if you didn't want to go that route, you could do it with JavaScript. You could have every line of text in its own span and position them all individually. Still not very scalable, probably slightly more accessible, probably not very performant. And there's probably you can think of 100 other ways that you could do this. So anyway, I think you know where I'm going with this. The point of all these examples, let's get away from these boring rectangles. We're stuck in our old ways, we're stuck on the grid. We could be doing something a lot more exciting. Grids are great for all those reasons, legibility, readability, balance. But once you understand the rules and you've learned how and why they work, and you have the foundations and you know why it's like this, then you can break the rules. And there comes a time when you want to break out of your grid. So wouldn't it be good if there was a way to do that? Well, there is. There's one neat trick. CSS Shapes. So what the hell are CSS Shapes all about anyway? Well, it's mainly about this property, and these are the different values you can use for it. So shape outside applied to an element makes text flow around that element in the shape that you've chosen. Hopefully the name is not too confusing. If this sounds weird, let's look at some examples. So we're just going to be covering the top 3 values today. I'm the one with the microphone, and I don't think inset is very interesting, so scrap that. Ellipses, I think they're just basically the same as circles. I told you I wasn't a designer, so scrap that. So let's start with circle. I got to warn you, a lot of these are real Ronseal CSS properties. They pretty much do what they say on the tin. So hopefully it is unsurprising to you that shape outside, circle, aligns text around a circle. Easy. So this is a really simple example. Assuming you wanted this red dot layout, you could do that however you wanted. I've done it like this. And then the only thing that you need to do to get the text aligning around the circle is to add this one property. It's super easy. You don't need to add any arguments to it or anything. It's just there. I think it's pretty neat. If you don't have shape outside support, we'll talk more about this later as well, then no biggie. You just get your normal rectangular boxy alignment. You haven't impacted your readability or your accessibility. So that's circles. On to polygons. So I thought the simplest example of a polygon is a triangle. This is what it might look like. And this is how you would make that triangle shape for the text to flow around. So it's slightly more complicated. You have to actually know the shape that you want to draw and figure out the numbers. And again, this is a simple, super simple example. You can set up your triangle however you want. I've done it like this. And that's just the one-liner again that you need to add to get that really nice sharp line of text aligning around your shape. And just as with circle, if it's not supported, then you just fall back to your standard boxy grid. No problem. So this is another example of a polygon. This is still really simple. It's just a square rectangle with the corner cut off. But when you try and go and make that shape, you can see this is looking a bit crap. These numbers are getting in my way. How do I keep them straight in my head? Where do I start from? All these kind of, And it gets worse. Polygon could have loads of points. You could do something really crazy like this. And these points actually go on probably out the window. It's huge, this declaration. So this is beginning to look like a bit of a pain in the ass and probably a bit of a barrier to entry to using CSS shapes. If I have to think about this stuff all the time, then I'm probably not going to bother. So we're very lucky that Jen Simmons and a bunch of other people have been doing a bunch of really good work to make this stuff easier for us. This is where the video works, hopefully. So this is Firefox Nightly. Yes, it does work. And it now has a CSS Shapes editor. So I've loaded up my page. I'm just going to inspect the element that has the shape on it. And I don't know if you can see down here, but right next to the declaration, there's a little square. You click on it. And then you get your points in the browser just there. And you can start dragging them around and move things about, do whatever you like. This just blows my fucking mind. Sorry, French. I think this is incredible. And the values are actually changing here. I don't know if you can see that. But it's dynamically updating everything. So when you've got it looking how you want, or you and your designer are pairing at your computer and you've got it how you want it, you can just copy that all over. We don't have round-trip editing yet. That's the next talk. So I think that's this is amazing, yeah. It's in Firefox nightly. It's not like prime time yet. You have to go into the config and enable some properties, I think the top two. And I found this, again, by following Jen Simmons on Twitter. She's amazing. She's done a video that explains a whole lot more stuff about these tools and what else is available. It's not just CSS Shapes. So I recommend you go and have a look at that. However, if getting Firefox nightly and turning on the config is too much effort for you, there is also a similar tool in Chrome. This is an extension that you can add to the browser, and it does kind of similar stuff. So that's all about polygons. And even with these tools, you might find that it's still a pain in the ass. You've got to drag stuff around. Oh, God. So there's one last value for the shape outside property that I want to tell you about today. And that is shape outside URL. Now, if you thought that editing tools in the browser was magic, this is like a black art. This really blows my mind. Actually magic, or as near to it as browser development has got for me. So shape outside URL takes an image parameter, and the browser knows where the transparent parts of the images are. So when you add this property, this just happens automatically by magic for you. There's a couple of extra bits there that are added in. So shape outside is this is the image that you're going to wrap the text around. The image threshold is how much of the pixel is transparent before it's kind of recognized as the alignment. And then this new shape margin property is just to get that gap so that things don't kind of bump up right up against each other. I found this out and it just completely blew my mind. Again, I think this is amazing. And I think it's a much better use case for shape outside, because I think if you want to do this kind of work, then it's probably more likely that you will be aligning text around an image rather than around a random triangle like I've been doing in my examples. So if you've gone to the effort of making this transparent image and the designer's happy with it and everything like that, then you may as well just chuck it in there and kind of let the browser do the work for you. Brilliant. So that's shape outside. There's one other property which I would like to talk to you about, which is shape inside. I think of it as it's not ready yet, unfortunately. This is like a preview of 5 years down the line, probably. I think of it as the opposite of shape inside, but it would allow us to do arty things like this, where the text will go inside the shape rather than outside. It's kind of a weird one. It was actually implemented in a couple of browsers a while back, and then it turned out to be a little bit more complicated than it seemed at first, I think, so they quickly ripped it back out again. I'm not sure when this is going to turn up, unfortunately. So that's CSS Shapes. A couple of things to remember if you do want to take this away and go back to your homes and offices and start using it. Browser support. It's not great. That video that I showed you with the Jen Simmons talking about the editor tools, she said that this is going to be available and those tools will be available in Firefox 59. So I guess that's good. It's on its way. And I think it has a roadmap priority of medium for Edge. So no idea what that means. But otherwise, not terrible. And the nice thing about it, as Jen said, is no biggie. If it doesn't work, then you just fall back to your normal grid. It's like an extra progressive enhancement thing that you add on at the end, or the beginning. So the other thing to remember if you want to use CSS Shapes is thinking about how you deal with responsiveness. So that polygon argument will take, I was showing you pixels, but it does use rems. You can use percentages. You can use whatever you like in there. You could have your 100% image and reshape it however you like. One thing that probably is worth mentioning is this is a redesign of Stuff and Nonsense website, which I found very recently. I think it's quite new. And you'll see that their examples all have a flush right edge on the text, and the ragged edge is on the left-hand side. And that's really important to keep that readability that we don't want to lose from having our grid layouts, because reading from the right edge of ragged text is really difficult. You can't find your way back to where you started from. So if you're doing stuff in a right to left language, you probably want to be doing all of your images on this side. So use it or lose it. I think with these kind of properties, when they're brand new like this, it's really up to us as developers to implement them and to try and experiment and use them. Otherwise, they will just get taken away again if we don't play nicely with our toys. I think go forth, experiment, throw some CSS shapes. And if you do, then share them with me. I'm really excited to see what you are all inspired to make, and tell me how you get on. I think that's it from me. Yeah. Thank you.